Warning: this episode contains human waste. Big Oz takes no responsibility for the call-out fee to clean your sofa. Pause now and finish your dinner.
Hello and welcome to another episode about composting toilets. So we actually did a previous episode which is basically how you empty this Nature's Head composting toilet. If you want to watch that, I'm going to pop it up at the top here. You might want to start there if you've come here first. But otherwise, this is a bit of Q&A. So we had so many comments underneath that video asking us just different things that we obviously hadn't included for you. So what I wanted to do was go through today and talk about some of the things that you really want to know. Don't forget as well, if you're new to our channel, please feel free to like this video. You can also subscribe for more videos. We've got lots of information on caravanning and camping while we travel around Australia. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is actually the weight of the toilet. So something that you guys said a lot about with this particular toilet is how are you supposed to get this out of your caravan, because it's going to weigh an absolute ton. It's completely awkward. It's just not going to work. And I basically wanted to just do some myth busting for you. So what we did is with our most recent empty, we actually weighed this toilet full. So it was 4 weeks worth of poo, and it was also 3/4 full of wee, and it worked out to be 21.6 kilos. That's with wee and with poo included. Then we took the lid off and we weighed just this bottom portion without the wee canister, just this bottom portion here, and that was 16.4 kilos. So something that you guys mentioned in the last video was that I actually took the whole toilet out and I made it look quite bulky and quite awkward. But the thing was is I wanted to get the whole toilet outside in one piece so I could show you me taking it apart outside. So there's certain ways that you do things for YouTube so that you can understand how that works, including the way we filled the bag. Normally I'd put a bag over the top. You're not obviously going to take the time to go and have a look at your poo and everything that's left behind, but I made it quite out there and open so you guys could see what it actually looked like inside, because everything online is so sanitized and sterile and just wasn't really giving anyone the answers that they needed, and it wasn't giving me the answers that I needed when I was looking for the information myself. Another idea that came up heaps when we did that video was about putting some handles on this bottom portion of the toilet. And you know what? I totally agree. If there was a way that this toilet could be made so that it's easier to use and you've got some handles to grab on, that would be much easier than the way it is right now. But in saying that, this works. You could use an epoxy and stick a couple of handles on the side if you really want that. But again, it's only going to be 16 kilos when you've got the poo portion, which in comparison, if you have a cassette toilet, our one used to take 19 litres of liquid. So it's going to be at least 19 kilos. By the time you include the plastic, maybe 20 kilos. So technically, it's not something that's going to be heavier for you to use. Okay, so I've got my phone out for this so I can give you some specific numbers. But when we did that most recent empty, we actually did the bush version of the empty. So at the moment, you're going to see some footage over the top. Basically, to dig a hole, we started at 5:01 p.m. and we finished at 5:08 p.m. So it took us 7 minutes to dig that hole. Or should I say it took 7 minutes for my partner to dig that hole. I filmed him. And then the next step of that is to bury what's in the composting toilet. So that waste was put in there around about 5:12 p.m. And by the time it was all put in there and covered up again, it was then 5:15 p.m. So that was a total of 3 minutes. So in total, for digging the hole and burying the waste, that was 10 minutes worth of work. Yes, we had to drive from our campsite. We were about probably 600 meters away from where we were able to do that. And we were actually camped up near a pine forest. And that pine forest was very remote and out of the way. We went right into that forest and dug our hole there. So the next time anyone's going to see that soil is probably when they're harvesting that pine tree. And I think they leave them a good 10, 15 odd years. So it was safe where it was. To answer your question that it takes too long and there's too much work involved to actually get rid of this waste, I completely disagree. 10 minutes worth of digging and burying and probably another 10 minutes of transport time and just getting ready. And in amongst that, we managed to film as well. So 20 minutes once a month to get rid of your number twos. It's really not much at all. Again, we had a lot of comments from people that were saying, you know, your waste is a biohazard and you can't put that in the bin, and, you know, putting that out in the garden the way you did or the way you would is the worst thing in the world, and we're going to cause the end of the world with diseases and things like that. But, you know, keep in mind as well, other animals carry diseases. Our dogs, our cats, people's horses, chicken poo, all those things are full of diseases, and yet they're allowed to poo in our backyard and do it straight on the grass. At least ours is being buried. The other thing that came up a lot is that people thought that Hep B would be amongst the poo a lot of the time. That's not the case because it actually transfers through blood and bodily fluids. So unless someone's bleeding at the same time, I would like to think that they're aware of that situation and they're going to be thoughtful about where they put their number twos for you. If they don't, that's very unfortunate and wrong of them. However, I can guarantee you that we don't have that and we do it well in the bush, which most composting people do because they're very aware of nature and they're aware of what is right and wrong to do. So we had a few questions in there which came up quite regularly. I answered them a lot in the comments to the point where there was more coming through. So I thought I'd put these together as a little frequently asked questions, I guess. But the main question that came up was, if you're a short-term user, how is this composting toilet going to work for you? Because obviously you've got this foot pedal that you're turning all the time. You need to have dry and wet and all these different aspects of it. So as a short-term user, all you would need to do when you get home, empty your wee canister and put in a small portion of vinegar and leave it like that. And your poo canister, if you unplug your 12-volt plug, if it's going to be months at a time, I would unplug your 12-volt plug so that there's no air movement in there and it stops it drying out too much. That's it. You just leave it. That's it. It's no different to having a composting pile at home that you put your veggie waste in or any of your other natural ingredients that you'd have at home. This is just number 2 base. So you just leave it there. It's not an issue in the world. When you get back to the caravan and you're ready to do your next trip, you plug your 12-volt fan in again to get that motion of the air happening. If you turn this and you find that it's quite firm and that you can't actually move that at all, you can add some water to moisten it again and then it's good to go. Another question that came up a lot is, what happens if you need to go to the toilet and you're going to pee and poo at the same time? So it's kind of, you just do it. So I know for men, it's very directional. Obviously, their wee is going to go towards the front because they're in a seating position. So it's going to go into the wee canister. For girls, sometimes, depending on our biology, it isn't always that easy and it doesn't flow in a forward motion. For me personally, if I know that I'm there to do a number 2 and then the number 1 comes around the same time, close the flap, do your wee, and then open it again. And you can do all that from the comfort of the seat while you sit there because it is just right there. It's a simple motion. And then apart from that, it's all going to go mainly directed into the places it should go to. So in the scenario that a few drips of wee go into the poo canister, it really isn't the end of the world. It's going to be okay. If you're going to do a full litre wee into there, that's when it becomes a problem. Another question that came up from quite a few females. Now, blokes, if you don't want to hear about this, I suggest you go grab a beer or grab a cup of tea and come back in a second. But how does time of the month work with this toilet? There are a lot of products that girls can use on the market today, whether it be the absorbent undies, you've got your pads, you've got tampons, there's the cup. It's just really up to you what mix of products you're going to use. Obviously, if you're using tampons or you've got pads, you cannot put it into the poo canister, and that would go for a normal toilet anyway. You need to find a bin and you need to go put them into a bin. So generally with this toilet, you're probably going to have a bin nearby where you're collecting your toilet paper, and that's where tampons or pads or any of those products to do with sanitary care need to go. If you're on the toilet and you are someone who is, heavy flow, and it's still happening while you're on the toilet, it's okay. It's just going to run into the pee canister and it's just going to sit in there. What's going to happen is it will change the colour slightly, so it's not going to be that yellowy wee colour. It's going to resemble the fact that there has been some blood in there. If your partner's really squeamish with blood or they're not okay with periods, it might mean that around that time of the month you're going to need to empty that canister. If they're okay with it, then hey, it's really no different to normal. And again, if some of those drips, if you're going for a number 2, say, and some of those drips end up in the poo canister, it really isn't the end of the world. It's only when you're putting in litres and litres of water or like a big wee that it's going to cause issues. So don't stress too much about that. From a cleaning perspective, sometimes you might have to get a couple of squares of toilet paper and just give a wipe because it may not run away entirely. And that's more just for your own, peace of mind that no one else has to go in there and have that problem there to deal with in a sense. I know our 3-year-old, the couple of times where he's noticed anything of that form, he's just like, Mum, what's happening? Someone is bleeding. That's the only time it's ever going to be an issue. Other than that, it is what it is. Another question that came up a lot was around the fan. So you can either have a fan on this side or the other side. Ours is over here, just for reference, but that's running 24/7 in your caravan. And some people were worried about what the usage would be for that fan. And I can tell you now, it's 1.7 amps per 24 hours. So it's really not much at all. You're going to find Sirocco fans and other small appliances are going to use much more power than this will altogether. Another frequently asked question that came up was, what is the difference between using sawdust or peat? Personally, for us, we haven't used anything other than peat, and we find that works really well for us. However, through the hundreds of comments that we had on that last video, I did read a lot of people in there saying that they use sawdust. Some people are actually cutting wood regularly and creating their own sawdust. So they've chosen to use that instead and said that it actually has a better absorbency rate than what the peat does. So on all counts, sawdust seems to be very comparable. However, we can't personally give you an opinion as we haven't tried it, but from what I'm hearing from other people, sawdust will work just as well. The only time I've used a sawdust-based composting toilet was at a camp we went to, and they had the equivalent of a drop toilet, and when you go, you pour some sawdust over the top. There was no smell there whatsoever. It's similar to this. It didn't have any smell whatsoever, but as I said, we haven't used it on a personal front with this composting toilet, so we couldn't tell you honestly if it's any better or worse, but feedback, it sounds pretty good. Can you use a bag inside the bucket? The short answer is no. And the reason being is because you've got this pedal that has to move around and there's a mechanism inside that's going to churn everything that's inside. If you were to try and put a bag in there, it's going to lay over the top of them and eventually it's going to get ripped up. Then you end up with plastic throughout your waste. And then if you want to go bury a hole, you're basically burying pieces of plastic in amongst your waste. So it's not ideal. If you were going to put a bag in there at all and then do this up over the top of it, you just would not be able to use this foot pedal. If you move this, it's going to destroy your bag. So that's the simple answer basically. A bag doesn't work. A lot of people were saying they're using a bucket setup. So it's just a simple bucket with a bag and then doing their business and sawdust over the top, and that's working for them. So that is another option if you don't want to have something that involves all this mechanism and you don't want as much cleanup. However, in this scenario with a Nature's Head toilet, it's not possible. The other question we had quite a lot come through was around weeing and this bucket only being a 10-litre container and that it wasn't enough, and people were disheartened by the fact that they'd have to empty it every couple of days. However, there's a couple of reasons for that. A 10-litre tank, it will hold a couple of days worth of wee, but anything longer than that, your wee is no longer going to be in a sterile state with vinegar or without, and it's going to start smelling. So if you have a larger canister than 10 litres and you want to hold on to that for a week, you're going to know about it. That's where the smell comes from, is old wee. And I mean, I don't know about you, but when I used to live at home, my partner sometimes would have his regular wee spot outside, and then boys would come over and they would all do it in the same place. And you know that that's where that happens. And it's the same sort of thing. You're going to end up with a smell. And it's not quite pleasant. A few people have said that they actually plumbed in this wee portion into their grey water tank, or they've run it directly out of the caravan so it can go to the ground. Running into a grey water, I understand the idea behind it and how that might benefit you so you don't have to empty it as regularly, but we have a grey water tank, and I can tell you right now, if our daughter does a wee, just one wee in the shower, and that's sitting in our 80-litre grey water tank, everything about that grey water smells, and it comes up through your pipes and you can smell it. So if you have smells and you have wee going into your grey water, I can guarantee you that's what it is. The other thing as well that they were doing was running the pipe from the toilet directly to the ground. And I mean, in some cases, yes, that's okay. It's really no different to weeing on a tree. But I think the thing that bothers me about that is when it's going to be going straight to the back of your caravan somewhere. It's going to be just running onto the ground, and it's where you are and where you're staying. And eventually after a few days, again, you're going to end up with that smell issue where everything's going to one location and staying there and going a bit rank, basically. So I wouldn't recommend that. I like with this, you can just have your 10 litres of wee. One day it goes on that tree. One day it'll go on that tree. One day you can pop it over there somewhere. You know, like you can move it around rather than just having it condensed in one location. Another area which maybe we hadn't covered enough was around cleaning, and a few of the ways that you can actually clean your composting toilet. Now, some of these things you're going to learn further down the track after you've had it for a few months, but something that will happen with your wee container is it kind of like crystallizes, I guess, and you will get a little bit of staining sometimes on the inside of the bucket. We have had it a couple times now, and we've been able to just kind of rinse it out. It's almost like large sand granules, and they'll come out. However, if you're finding that they're sticking to the inside of that wee container, one of the best things we've heard so far is put a handful of pebbles or stones in there, shake it around, and what happens is that'll actually break it off the walls, and then you can pour them out and give it a rinse out with water again. So you're probably wondering as well how you're going to seal off that bucket. It actually has a lid that comes with it when you first buy the toilet itself. You can buy more of these 10-litre canisters with their lids as well, so you can seal it off, and that's also beneficial if you want to take your wee from the caravan, a couple of minutes away somewhere, or going to a dump point or something like that. You can put a lid on and take it with you. When it comes to this poo canister, there is actually a black seal that runs around the lip there. It's like a rubber seal. It basically just keeps it airtight so that fan can do its job. We haven't had to replace it yet. However, we've been told about once every 12 months or so, you will need to replace that seal. It's as simple as peeling it off and putting a new one on. I'm sure any local hardware store will have a double-sided seal that will suit that toilet. A few people said that their OCD would have just taken control and they would have to clean their poo canister as best they could and really get out all of that waste from it. But I'm telling you now, there's a reason that you leave some of it in there, and it actually helps with the composting process. So to have some of that good bacteria in there that starts to break down your waste, it's worth having it there. If you completely clean it all and make it sterile and antibacterial, you're starting that process from scratch every time. You might find you're going to end up with more smells, or it may not break down as well. You may not get any of those molds in there that you want to have. And so, yeah, trying to keep some in there and not completely cleaning it is actually a really good thing. The other thing as well is that the poo that's left behind with that peat, it's not completely composted yet. So if you're going to go and lay it over on someone's lawn or somewhere like where we are right now, I highly recommend you get permission. And if you're in a suburban area and it's someone's front lawn, it may not be the best place for you to put it. However, some people who have a composting pile will be really open to it. If you're somewhere that's out in the bush and they've got somewhere that's remote within the property, they'll be okay with it. And again, if you're going to bury it, it's going to continue that composting process once it's under the soil as well. So it's not ideal that you go and put it next to someone's driveway in the middle of a suburban area. Just keep that in mind, because a 4-week process isn't enough to completely compost your waste. We're aware of that. However, I think a couple of people are under the impression that it will completely compost your waste, and it won't do that. The final thing I want to talk to you about cleaning wise is when you get this toilet, you actually get this little spray bottle. So it's called the Compost Toilet Cleaner and Stimulant. So initially when you start it, you can actually pop some of these sprays in there. That's going to help you get your compost started. It's also good just for lubricating the bowl and cleaning out the bowl. We only use this once, and we haven't bought any refills for it. And the reason being is because we've now made a different mix, which is 1 part vinegar and 2 parts water. I also put in a bit of eucalyptus oil just so it smells nice, or sometimes lemon eucalyptus as well, and a couple of sprays of that after every wee and every poo. It gives you a really nice odor within the toilet, but it also helps just to keep it clean, but in a natural way, so you can dispose of it anywhere. So pretty much that's our Q&A around composting. I really hope that's helped you understand it even better again. As I said, we didn't really know that there was such a need for a composting video on the market until it went so crazy with the views that it had and the comments you had, and just people in general just loving that there was some real information about composting. So I really hope this is going to continue to answer a few more of your questions and help you make a decision either way. It was really good in comments to see people were open about discussing how composting worked, and people were open to say, hey, thanks for that. However, I want to stick with a cassette. And that's what it's all about. It's really just education, so everyone can see what suits them best. So this again is just a little bit more education for you. If you're going down that composting route, and we've already helped you once by showing you how to use it, I really hope these few Q&As just clear a few things up for you before you start with your own composting toilet. Again, Thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and if there is anything at all, again, that I haven't answered for you, feel free to pop them in the comments, but I'm really hoping that this time we've covered nearly everything, and we'll see you next week for another episode. Testing. Let's check this audio. Or does this look okay? Is that okay? So the first thing I wanted to talk about, I definitely need to silence mine. So I'm just trying to think how to talk about this. The other thing as well, bloody parrots.
Hey legends, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Please like, subscribe and tell your friends. If you need more of a Big Oz fix, head over to our website bigozexplorers.com for merch, information on our setup, places we've been, recipes, links to our socials and much more. We look forward to seeing you for a new adventure next week. Cheers guys.